Wooper's a cute, funky looking little guy. For me, I mostly associate Wooper with the Gen 4 games, but their actual debut was alongside Generation 2 with Pokemon Gold and Silver. Part of the reason that might be is because it wasn't until recent years that Wooper started getting all the love they deserve, becoming quite a popular Pokemon with fans online, to the point where I'm pretty confident in saying that Wooper is a fan favorite. And now that Wooper's at the forefront of fans' minds, with the newly announced regional forms, I figured it would be a better time than ever to cover Wooper in today's episode of Pokéology. Hey guys, look at these numbers. Only 1.6% of you are subscribed, so if you want to help the channel out and catch videos as soon as they're released, then go ahead and hit subscribe and become part of Team Razorfang. Let's start with the classic Wooper, the waterfish Pokemon. Wooper is an amphibious Pokemon, meaning that it can survive on both land and water. The physical features include small armless body, a larger head, along with round black eyes and purple gills. Its gills actually have a different number of branches depending on their gender, with a few more on the males. Additionally, it sports this blue pattern on the stomach, along with two round feet and a tail. Wooper mostly lives in areas with cold water, and will partially bury itself in mud at the bottom of lakes to sleep. Its amphibious nature comes into play when going onto land to forage for food, particularly when the air is cool. Examples of their habitat can be seen in routes or areas that may have a safari or marsh-like atmosphere. Of course, places like the Great Marsh in Platinum and the Safari Zone in Emerald, but also locations like Route 32, the Ruins of Alph, Route 212, West Lake Axwell, South Lake Mullick, and Soothing Wetlands all exhibit this kind of atmosphere as well. They've also been known to make their home in cold, wet places like Union or Icefall Cave. There are some other notable examples that break this trend, such as Island 4 and Ruin Valley of the Sevi Islands, as well as some Sword and Shield zones. However, these locations can be explained with a little further analysis. We should be sure to highlight Wooper's amphibious nature when the air is cold. You see, Island 4 and Ruin Valley have a direct connection to Icefall Cave and Water Path, respectively. So, it's easy to assume that Wooper ventures from the former area to the latter when the air gets cold enough to look for food. This theory is further supported by the additional locations from Sword and Shield, as Wooper only appears in these areas during raining or thunderstorm conditions. When walking on land, Wooper coats itself in a slimy toxic film that prevents itself from dehydrating. This toxic film is no joke either. A single touch with your bare hand could cause a shooting toxic pain. While I can't say for sure how this toxin is produced, we'll cover this more while looking at their Paldean form. As you can see, Paldean Wooper has swapped its blue out for a brown coloration, and its gills have adopted a thinner bone-like structure. It's explained to us on the Pokemon website that these changes took place many years ago, and were a result of Wooper being forced out of its natural home onto land. To better adapt to its life on land, they began to cover themselves with a poisonous layer of film. And it seems that in doing so, they dropped the water typing and took on the poison. This poisonous typing likely came from the original Wooper, who already possessed this ability to use a layer of toxic film when walking on land. This is evidenced by the fact that this protective film was also used to keep their skin from dehydrating, so it's likely that this biological feature began to grow stronger and stronger the more time Wooper spent on land. Paldean Wooper's gills, together with its head, suggest a skull and crossbones symbol, a symbol typically used to warn against hazardous or poisonous substances, which may be a reference to its new poisonous typing. The gills, coloration, and new rib pattern along with its location could suggest the regional form's inspiration to be the Iberian ribbed newt, a salamander native to the Iberian Peninsula famous for its poison-coated ribs through its skin, which it uses as a defense mechanism. I like this theory, and it would line up pretty well, especially since original Wooper is mostly inspired by the axolotl, which are in fact a species of salamander. You can even see Wooper's axolotl inspiration in its shiny form, which looks just like one. While I do like the Iberian ribbed newt idea for Paldean Wooper, I think there's another story to tell here. I have a different theory that takes on a little ecology and history, that being, Paldean Wooper is a reference to the fate of the axolotl and their natural habitat. Let me explain. Axolotls were originally found in several lakes underlying what is now Mexico City, Lake Xochimilco and Lake Chalco, both of which were once a part of the greater Lake Texcoco. However, the wild population of axolotls has been near extinction for some time now, and has likely been on the decline for hundreds of years. The story goes that these lakes were drained after the Spanish-Aztec War, which lasted from 1519 to 1521. While often depicted as a contest between a small contingent of Spaniards defeating the Aztec Empire, it was much more like a coalition of Spanish invaders aided alongside tributaries of the Aztec, their enemies, and their rivals. These combined forces were able to defeat the Mexicana of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. The draining of these lakes will only start a trend for the wild axolotl population. Lake Chalco no longer exists entirely, having been drained as a flood control measure, and Lake Xochimilco remains a remnant of its former self, now being mainly composed of canals. Not to mention that in more recent years, Not only have axolotl populations been put under pressure from the growing Mexico City, but non-native invasive species of fish have not been making it easy either. Fish such as the African tilapia and the Asian carp compete for their primary resource of food, as well as endangering their young. So the axolotl's natural habitat in Mexico has been slowly disappearing since the time of the Spanish-Aztec War. A pretty sad story, but what does it have to do with Paldean Wooper? Well, this original form tells the story of a Wooper being forced out of their home, mirroring the true fate of the axolotls in their natural home. Wooper's new typing even came about by means of not wanting to dry out on land, which would have been necessary if your home wasn't just taken but drained of water completely. While Paldean Wooper was able to adapt to their new environment, wild axolotls can still only be found in Lake Xochimilco, and the population is low, estimated to only be 1,000 at most. And with Paldea being based on the Iberian Peninsula where Spain is located, and it was Spain who drained the water, to me the connection is clear as day. And in this way, Paldean Wooper is a lot like Galarian Corsola, who, along with its evolution and original Corsola, tell the story of coral bleaching, the dying of coral reefs around the world. While the wild axolotl is slowly seeing its home disappear, there does seem to be a decently sized captive population, as they're often used in scientific research regarding regeneration. Axolotls feature the ability to regenerate entire lost appendages in a period of months. In some cases, even vital structures like the tail, limb, and central nervous system. Even tissue can be recovered for the eyes and heart. They are also sometimes even able to restore less vital parts of their brain, if you can believe it. Additionally, they can easily accept transplants from other individuals, including the eyes and parts of the brain, restoring these organs to full functionality. There are even some cases where axolotls will restore additional appendages, as in they may end up with an extra one. It's believed that this regenerative feature might be due to them remaining in their larval state, never undergoing metamorphosis. Axolotls are unique in that way amongst amphibians. Most amphibians will undergo what's called metamorphosis, a process of transformation from an immature form to an adult form. While it is more complex than that, of course, it's something axolotls never do. However, they do have the capacity to do so. While unable to naturally, due to the lack of thyroid-stimulating hormone needed to undergo metamorphosis, if they're introduced to the hormone externally, it can be done. Typically done with injection, through this process, their bodies will become more adept to living on land, leading to increased muscle tone in the limbs, and absorbing the gills and fins into the body. What's even more interesting here is that artificially induced metamorphosis will lead to a reduction in skin permeability to water. This change in skin does allow them to stay more easily hydrated on land. Sound familiar? This is all great and all, and could even be another point of inspiration for Paldean Wooper, except that artificially induced metamorphosis will often lead to death during or even after a successful process. So if you have an axolotl, I wouldn't recommend trying this. Wooper's Japanese name, Upa, seems to be the same at first glance, but has some additional meaning that gets lost in translation. The name comes from a Japanese marketing term, Wooper Looper. This term was supposedly part of a Japanese fad, where people would keep salamanders as pets. However, the term has come to be directly associated with the axolotl, further cementing the inspiration through the name. But the axolotl itself also has an interesting origin of its name. In the Aztec language, Nahuatl, the word can be broken down into two parts, atl meaning water, and xolotl meaning dog. So, water dog. However, that's not all, as the name also has ties to Aztec mythos. There are many gods in Mesoamerican folklore, but one of them is Xolotl, the Aztec god of fire and lightning, most often depicted as a dog-headed man. Within the Aztec mythos, he acts as the soul guide for the dead. However, his association with the axolotl comes from one story in particular. To prevent being killed by another god, he hides himself by transforming, and one of these transformations was of course the axolotl. That is just one brief part of a very fascinating story. If you'd like me to cover it or other folklore in more detail, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure there are many Pokemon inspired by mythos with interesting stories to tell, and I'd be more than happy to discuss them all with you. So that concludes our study of Wooper. Doing in-depth research on Pokemon like this was a lot of fun, so hope you all enjoyed the video. I'd like to put out more videos like this for each Pokemon, filled to the brim with information, inspiration, and ideas for each one. If you have a Pokemon you'd like me to cover, leave me a comment letting me know which one down below. But for now, that's all for Wooper. Who knows, there might be more information to cover once we get Scarlet and Violet in our hands. I have a feeling that Paldean Wooper may evolve into a new Pokemon instead of Paldean Quagsire, and I'm excited to see what Game Freak comes up with. I hope you all enjoyed, and thank you all again for watching. Like if you did, sub for more, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.